This time in the Prop Master, well, I do about a third the work as usual, but try to pass it off like a regular video. All it really comes down to is that I'm trying a slightly different format where I make some shorter videos that come out more frequently. That'll make YouTube a lot happier, and maybe you as well. In fact, that's something that you can comment down below and let me know if you prefer the shorter videos or the longer videos. In fact, when it comes to comments, comment anything. I don't care. I desperately need the interaction with the video. Now in this video, we're just doing a little bit of stuff. We're going to change up that top deck like we talked about in the previous video. And we work on those end caps that go on the bottom of the tanks on the sides. Now, there's not much to show when it comes to the model, so I don't have it out here, but that's still pretty important work. And even though there's not a lot going on, this is supposed to be a shorter video, so we better get to work. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to deal with this top part here, as promised in the last video. You see on this side, where I've already done it, that's the thickness that it really should be, and this is just too thin. So to do that, we're going to have to cut a piece out of our Sintra, 1/4 inch Sintra. What you want to do is print out the template for this piece, the upper tank bracket, or was it upper tank brace cover, and make sure you do it from the new templates, not the old templates. Otherwise, you'll have to do this part all over again, where we had to add that piece on. But that's still not quite going to fit right, because this only goes up to this PVC here, not to this PVC here, which is what we're going to have to deal with now. So what you want to do is to print out this template, and then you want to lay a 4-inch PVC, kind of nuzzle it into this line. This is the line from the original template right here, and nuzzle a 4-inch PVC into that space, and then reach on the inside of that, and you can mark the correct width right here. I'm afraid you're not going to be able to see that. There we go. And then you can see how much you're going to need extra, and make a new template with that extra on there. So just take that template, and before you cut it out, do that, then cut it out. The other modification you want to make is this bottom edge here. You're going to need to measure up 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters and cut that off, because we've got this piece of Sintra added to that. Now, if you didn't add this piece of Sintra on, then you don't have to do that part. But when you cut that out, you're going to get your piece here. The first thing you want to do is to sand a little bevel around this edge. You don't have to worry about this part. You want these to be sharp. In fact, do not bevel these. But you want to bevel the ones that are going to be rubbing up against all this stuff, because there's going to be little bits of like a little glue bead in there, most likely. It's going to make it difficult to lay down flat. So by sanding that little bevel in there, like we did with the last video, it'll make this sit in better. Also, there's a really good chance that it's not going to fit perfectly in there. I had to put mine in place. It wouldn't actually fit all the way in there. It would only go out about that far. So then I marked it where I need to sand away, and then went over and sanded a couple of little pieces off so that it would lay flush in here. And it fits fairly well, but you can see there are definitely some gaps here, and it hangs over. That's just going to be the reality of, we built this and then we cut this out. They're not going to be exactly the same. So I can lay this piece in. Now I'm going to go ahead and mark. What I did over here is I just glued it down and then sanded everything flush. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to take a pencil. I'm going to go ahead and mark everywhere where this piece is too big. I think it's unlikely that it'll be too small. I think most likely it's going to be like this. It's going to be a little bit too big, and we'll have to shrink it down a little bit. So now I have this line, and I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to cut all the way down to the line, but I'm going to cut it a lot closer than it is here. And after I make these modifications, I'll be back. Okay, so here's my piece after I've removed that material. And let's go ahead and glue this on. Make sure there's no dust in here, which is quite likely. And I'm just going to use super glue on this. Let's go ahead and make sure that fits pretty well. Yeah, I like that. The reason why I went ahead and removed this time instead of sanding it down to match this later is because this will make it a lot easier for me to make sure there's not any gaps. I was having a hard time seeing, making sure there were no gaps in this when I did this side. So this will make that a lot easier. Now when I put this glue in there, I want to put it pretty close to the edge all the way around, because that's the part that I want to make sure is really well secured. I don't want to put it right on the edge because I don't want to have a huge mess. Pretty close to the edge. Except for in the back where I can actually put it right up against the edge. Okay. Wipe up a little extra. It's like, yeah, you can see where this on the edge here is kind of trying to not lay down flat. And that was difficult to see on the other side. Okay, that looks pretty good. Hit with a little zip kicker. Okay, and now for these gaps, well, let's go ahead and do some fine sanding and make sure everything lines up perfectly first. We want to concentrate on these corners here to make sure that they both line up perfectly, the top and the bottom. Let me finish sanding these out and I'll be back. Now that these are nice and smooth and even, let's go ahead and fill these gaps, and we're going to do that the same way we've been doing for most everything. Now once again, you could fill this with caulking at the end, but it's pretty easy to do this kind of thing with the baking soda. I'm not worried about making this a solid piece, so I'm just going to fill this all the way to the top, all the way around. So if it's just powder on the inside, that's totally fine to me. And something like this, or a piece of cardboard, you know, a flat cardstock or something, just makes it so easy to make sure that it's flat all the way across. And after you do that, you want to make sure that you clean everything off as well as you can. Still got this corner here, or I should say this gap over here. And I'm not worried about making this perfect because I will have to come through here and do a lot of work with caulking afterwards. So if, you know, I've got like a weird corner right here because the baking soda wants to fall out, I'm not going to worry about taping that because I'm going to come back in here with caulk before we paint and do a lot of, you know, cleanup. Okay, one little spot in the very back. Okay, so I have my thin CA glue and I'm using one of those really fine tipped applicators that comes with the bottle. I didn't do it on the other side and it's kind of hard to get right into these corners. So I'm going to see if this makes it any better. It's definitely easier to get this into the corner. That's a lot of glue. I'll try to wipe up what I can. Just don't stop or your paper towel will glue in place. A little bit of paper towel. Okay. Now there's a little bit of a gap, even though I was trying really hard not to. It's not really much, but I can get my fingernail into several places. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this over, and we can go ahead and fill that with this baking soda. Okay, so here's the gap I need to fill. A couple of spots are worse than the others. And this is going to be a little bit harder to do just because, you know, trying to get this in there. I mean, it's not that hard, but it's not a flat surface like what we had been dealing with. Now the thing about this is you need to be really careful to remove any excess. Because the thing is, especially like in here, we could really fill this up and make our lives a lot more difficult later on. Because if these aren't really crisp and sharp, they're going to look bad. So we definitely don't want a bunch of glue filling up these gaps. These little square-ended files are really helpful for trying to clean out any gaps in here. Okay, now let's be sparing, if we can, with the CA glue. I'm going to remove the applicator tip because we really don't need it here. I don't want a bunch of drips, but I'm not too worried about this excess glue as long as it stays on the end here, because we kind of want that, because once again we have sort of the end grain of this foam board that we want to seal, although this thin CA glue is not ideal for that. Okay, now once I find the regular super glue, let's go ahead and seal those ends. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and blow this with the compressor to make sure there's no baking soda anywhere. Now I just take my regular super glue and sort of smear it around. You don't want too much, but you also don't want to, not have enough. Take a paper towel and just try to quickly smooth that out. Once again, if you stay still, or if you have any baking soda or zip cooker on your paper towel, it's going to glue itself down. If you keep moving, you should be okay. Okay, and now even though you can still see that line, it should be totally smooth all the way across. And it is. The next thing we want to do now is to make the plugs that are going to go into the bottom of these tubes right here. So they'll fit in right here. And to do that, we want to use our 1/4 inch Centra. You can also purchase pieces that you can use to plug these bottom pieces off of eBay. But if you don't want to do that, here's how to make your own. So I've got a section of the same tubing as that. I'm going to lay it down here, and I'm going to take a pencil because it's going to give me a very fine line, and I'm going to mark the inside of that all the way around. And if you're doing both sides, you want to cut out 4 of these. I already have one of them cut out. I tried to do this with a hole saw, but it's just ever so slightly too small, and you want this to be very firmly, you want it to fit in there very firmly. So go ahead and cut this out. What would be really good for this as a hand tool would be a jeweler's saw, which is basically just a coping saw with a very fine blade. You could also just use a coping saw, or I'm going to use the jigsaw for this, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here this is, and as you can see, I cut it out very loosely. I'm not even that close to the line. Obviously, if you're using a jeweler saw, you'll want to cut right up against this line. You don't want to remove the line because remember, this is the inside of the tubing. So we want to leave that entire line, but you want to get right up against it. I've cut it out very loosely like this because I like to go over to the drum sander and use that to get right up against the line. Okay, that's close enough to give this a try. Okay, so to check this size, you do not want to try to force it into here because there's no access into this anymore to get it out. So definitely use your little scrap. And we're close, but it's definitely not going to go in without some serious, I mean, if I took a hammer, I could probably drive it in there, but we don't need to get that extreme. So for this last little bit, I want to go ahead and use one of my sanding sticks. So I'm going to take out very small amounts of this until I get it to fit snugly. I want this to be very snug because once we glue this in place, it's important that if we set this down on the ground or if it hits something, we don't want to basically hammer this cap into the inside of that. So I want it to be really well secured. Because if it gets knocked back up inside this, it's going to be really difficult to get it out. I've toyed with the idea of, you know, putting some little screws in here just to make sure that it can't move, but I think once we get the little rocket nozzles on the sides, it shouldn't take that much abuse, but, you know, I still want this to be tight. Okay, and I also want to, let's pick the edge that we did not put a line on, and let's round this little sharp edge over. That'll make it easier to put in place. That is so close. I could probably force it, but let's take a little bit more off. If you see a spot that looks like it's kind of sticking up, you know, it's not quite the same curve, then you can always do a little more on that spot. A little bit more. Okay, so that fits nice and snug. Now each side will have two of these. Only one of them has to fit snugly. The other one just can be roughly the same size. Now that we have that, we're going to take this one that's going to be the one that goes down inside the tube. And I'm just going to, so here's the knocked over corner. So this corner up here, I just want to color that in with a marker. And I'm doing this just to make our life a little bit easier in a few minutes. Try not to get any on the edge, but you will get a little bit. You do, however, want to get right up against the edge. This will be my top piece, and we're just going to glue these two pieces together with some super glue. I want to get it close to the edge and then fill in the middle. Get that as close as you can. You're probably going to get a little glue on your fingers, so gloves would not be a bad idea. Not sure how I got glue there, but Now the reason why I marked that one piece of Sintra was hopefully that's going to make it easier to know this, you know, be able to see this joint between the two pieces. I don't know if that was a success or not. It might have been just total overkill and gained nothing. Okay, so we have our bottom piece and our top piece. Remember this? This is the same piece that we used, you know, that you can use for that. It's the, let me go grab one. Okay, so this is the piece right here on the underside of a body armor sports water. This is the 1 liter size bottle, by the way, of body armor. So you can kind of see where that is, basically where the star ends. There's a little bit of a change in angle right there that you can see. Just cut that out and you'll have this. And I could go in and find the exact middle or measure this and you know, subtract that difference, divide it in half, and then draw a line. I'm not going to do any of that. This is not that precise, or it doesn't need to be that precise. I'm just going to lay this down and move it around until it looks like it's perfectly in the middle and the same distance all the way around. This doesn't have to be precise, it just has to look precise. Plus, this tube isn't perfectly circular. This probably, the cutout isn't perfectly circular, so, you know, it's not going to be perfect. That looks pretty good, so I'm going to draw a line. Now what you want to do is just put this in a vise, or you can hold it by hand, and I'm going to take this rasp and I'm going to rasp off between this line and that line, so that, you know, basically where this is in half, I'm going to bevel that corner away. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to, you know, sort of connect those ends. Okay, so I've got this in the vise this way. I tried to do it flat, but I think I'm going to tear up this bottom piece of Sintra trying to hold it. So I think this is the better way to go. We'll just have to flip it halfway through. And it looks like it's pretty close to a 45-degree angle. Looks like maybe I'll do it in quarters. It's okay to curve that too. It doesn't have to be a flat edge. If you want to kind of cheat your way up to the line, that's going to be totally fine. If you go a little bit too far, that's fine too. It does not have to be perfect. What I'm doing is I'm getting pretty close, and then I'm just kind of changing the angle so I can kind of round that off. So I go a little bit flatter to get this edge, and then a little bit more like this to get this edge. I think you get the picture, and when I finish this, we'll get back over there. Actually, I think this will be a little bit easier to smooth out here in the vise, so we'll stay here for the moment. Just sanding stick. I just want to get rid of any of those big scratches. Plus I can sort of refine the edges a little better with this. Okay, now we can meet back over at the jetpack. Okay, so now we're back over here. Off camera, I did actually take some of that regular super glue and sort of seal that edge that we just sanded. But you've seen me do that 100 times, so it's not really necessary for you to see it again. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put this piece on here and glue it in place. Now there are different ways you can do this. I toyed with the idea of filling this level with hot glue, and then that way you'd have that whole surface area to glue it down. But the odds of that actually being a flat surface after I hot glued it or filled it with hot glue just seems unlikely, and it's tough to then cut that hot glue off. And you know, the way we glued everything up on the top sides of the jetpack worked fine. So I think we're just going to put some super glue around this outside edge and glue it onto here. And to do that, I finally went out and got some more gel super glue. It's just a lot easier to do something like this because the super glue will stay in place. And let's see if we can't get a little super glue all the way around. Now, knowing me, I'm definitely going to get super glue on my hands, but that's okay. I am very used to it. Because I can't think of how I'm going to do this without touching it. That's not good. All better. I'm going to hit that with some zip kicker so I don't glue myself down to it too badly. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And on camera it looks like it's completely over to one side, but as you can see, it's not. By the way, when you get lots of super glue all over your hands, I found that one of these coarse sanding sticks is definitely the best thing to clean it off. The super glue is hard, your skin isn't, so you know it doesn't bother your skin, but it takes off the super glue. Now that this is on here, I'm just going to lightly, because I don't want to mess up all the where I've sealed this up. Maybe seal it up after you do this part. I'm going to lightly sand off any edges that are on this part. Okay, and it's up to you. I like this detail. I think it looks like a pressure vessel, but it also kind of looks like a water bottle. So if you want to, you know, maybe this time we'll go ahead and take these off if you want to. Okay, let me finish this up and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so everything's nice and smooth. The important thing is that we've got basically two different angles here. We have this angle for the bottom of the water bottle, and then we have that angle where we did the piece of Sintra. I'm gonna make two of these, obviously, but don't put them in yet because we're gonna need access to the inside of that tube when we put on the little rocket ends. Now, I'm actually not going to use that because I went on to eBay and I bought these. These came with a whole set of all the peripherals that you can get for the jetpack. If you do a search on eBay for Boba Fett Jet Pack peripherals or just Boba Fett Jet Pack parts, you'll find all kinds of stuff like this. Some of them are good quality, some of them are not. You can usually just kind of see. They were kind of rough. They needed quite a bit of sanding and stuff, but they look pretty good. I'll put a link down in the description as to where I got these on eBay, but you may not want to use this brand. You may find something else you like better. I guarantee you can probably find them in aluminum if you wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and stick with these resin ones. I thought they were a little flimsy where this top part was glued to this part. So I filled them with that construction grade hot glue. Not the whole thing, but you know, enough to fill in this joint just to reinforce that a little bit. Now, when I got them, they're a little big, as you can see. So I did the exact same thing we did with the Sentra. I just centered them here and marked a line, and then went over to the disc sander and sanded them down to that line. It was pretty straightforward. I also bought these on Etsy. These are 3D printed pieces, and the detail on these, it came as a big kit, are phenomenal. They need a little work because they're 3D printed, but the detail is really, really nice on these. But as you can see, the scale, not so much. These are absolutely tiny. So beware about that. These are also nice because the pieces all screwed together. Everything about this kit was great, except for that it's obviously for like a kid's size. So be careful when it comes to, you know, looking for the dimensions of your pieces if you buy something on eBay. But once again, I'll find the link to these. These were rough, but they cleaned up pretty easily. I'll find the link and put it down in the description below. I know we haven't done a whole lot in this video, but this seems like a pretty good place to stop because this is sort of the last of the things that I'm actually building for this. The rest of the things that I'm going to add onto here are things that I've purchased on Etsy. The rocket thrusters and the little antenna things that go on here are things that are just so much easier for me to buy on Etsy as opposed to trying to find things at Home Depot that look kind of right or trying to make them myself. So it's very much a diminishing return on my investment at this point. Like I did with this, however, I will go ahead and give you some instruction on how, if you really want to make it yourself, how you can do that. But it's not things that I'm going to do myself. Also, by cutting this video short here, it lets me get videos out quicker, which seems to make everyone a lot happier, especially YouTube. And so I think I'm going to try to go that route with some shorter videos that are out to you in a more timely manner. I really want to thank the 5 or so of you that are consistently commenting on the videos. You have no idea how helpful that is to me and how much that affects the algorithm that YouTube uses. I still need a lot more people. Once again, I mean, if you're hearing this, then you absolutely just say hi, if nothing else. Just scroll down and leave a comment that says hi. That would be amazing. But if you have any questions or other comments, please leave them below and I will reply to them as soon as possible, pretty much as soon as I get them. And absolutely subscribe if you haven't already. But with the next things in mind, I'll see you next time. Thanks.